All right, let's add some state management with Pinia. All right, so today we're going to be adding Pinia into our project. It's just a state management system. If you ever worked with maybe like Vuex or something, this is the new way to do this. This is what Vue is pushing for their state management, right? It's so much nicer to work with, in my opinion. It is still very similar, but there's a lot of great things that come with it out of the box. The first thing is it's modular. Vuex was able to do that, but you kind of had to configure it to do that way. Out of the box, it came as like one massive store, and you had to kind of break it up as you went. It was possible, and it was the recommended way to go. But Pinia just went that way out of the box, which is awesome. It really is nice. And they kind of understand that we're going to need to test this, so they kind of put testing a little bit forward. You know, they have their own little package just for testing, which we are going to explore in this, which is huge. Another thing is that it's also written in the composition API. So we're going to be working in composition API. Let's continue working with that within Pinia, you know, within our state management. And we could either go a couple of routes. I'll show you both ways. But it's a chef's kiss. Awesome thing to work with. So let's dive into it. All right, so the first thing we have, if we remember, we had our home page. We have our ref here and everything we're fetching. And if we come back to our to-dos, it's not running, but it had everything. We know what it looked like. So what I want to do is I want to add yarn add Pinia. We'll let this do its thing. And it did its thing, so that's fantastic. So now we can start adding it in. One of the things I need to do is in our JS folder, we need to have a store. And I already created this. It's stores, and I even had tests kind of waiting for us. They're just empty directories right now. But in our stores, I want to have a to-do store.ts. Here we're going to have, we need to export, const use to-do store equals define store. So that's going to be from import define store, and that's from Pinia. And this is just going to take one argument, two arguments, which is going to be the first one, which is the name of the store, right? So I'll just name it to-dos. You can name it to-do store. You can name it whatever you want. It just needs to be unique. So if you have multiple things for users, you want to make sure that they're broken up into whatever it is that they're doing. That way you can differentiate them when using them. So the next thing we have is our object, which in here we're going to have our normal stuff. So we have our state, we'll have our getters, and we'll have our actions. And these are all like this. So we have this, which is a function, which is going to return. We'll just wrap this like this. We'll have a list, which will be an empty array, this is just saying what we're returning. I like list because it's going to be a list of to-dos, right? I don't want to have to-dos.to-dos or anything like that. So we could do it. It wouldn't hurt anything. Let's name it to-dos. So then we have getters, and this is just an object, and in there we could say we're going to return our list, you know, and this could be, you know, we're taking a state, and this could just be our state.todos. And actions is another object, and that's just going to be what our actions are. We could do it this way, or if we want to stay with the composition API, we could do it like this. So we could say export const use to-do store equals define store and to-dos, and this is where it changes up. It's actually an object, and we're going to return that. So now we could do it just like we would in the composition API. So that's pretty cool. So we could do const to-dos equals a ref of empty array. So now we have to import that. So import ref from view. And then we have const. We'll say we can do our getters, which I guess we'll worry about that later, and then we could have our actions as well. So we'll leave this for now, but for this we need to return, right? And we're going to return our to-dos. All right. So you could go either way. It's up to you. I kind of like this way better. It's a little bit more what I'm used to. So it really doesn't matter. It does the same stuff. I like it this way. Do what you want. It's your app. So going back here, so we had it as list. We're going to change this to to-dos, but we could say, we're going to say const to-do store equals use to-do store. That auto imported that for us, and it's already there. But before we get ahead of ourselves, which we kind of already did, we need to actually use it, right? So if we go to app.ts, it's kind of high. And then what we need to do is import our create Pinia from Pinia. And we're going to say down here, const Pinia equals create Pinia. And then we just use it, app.use Pinia. That's it. That's us using Pinia. It's kind of already hooked up for us. We save this, come back here. List is not this anymore. We could say to do store and then .todos is going to equal that, right? And down here we'll have, instead of list, it's just to do store .to do. It's to-dos. So we should be able to save this, and if we yarn run dev or yarn dev, open this up. Let's refresh here. All right, we have in our console, let's see, is view. You're gonna give me show me Pinia running? We do. We have an array. So Pinia is already hooked up. Console to-dos store is installed. If we click fetch, we get our to-dos. And if we take a look back at Pinia, there's our to-dos in Pinia. We did it. We just moved it all over there. So now that's in state. If we go to about and come back to home, it's still there. So that's awesome, right? Oh, don't need that up again. So we could also move this function over there as well. So if we take this, remove it, and we go to to-do store, we could say const fetch equals async function. And that function is going to call Axios. So I'll just paste this in, and we'll say const response equals await Axios. Come over here, delete all that. And then we can say return, we don't need to return, we'll say todos.value equals response.data.todos. Oh, we need Axios in here. So import Axios from Axios. We're getting an error, and yep, we just didn't. No, that's not it. Async function blah. Too much. There we go. And that should be all set up. So if we come back here, we refresh, our to-dos are gone. They're not there anymore. We click, and let's see, click. All right, doesn't seem to be running. Our network isn't hitting it, and that's probably because we didn't import that. So if we come back to our to-do store, when we click this, fetch doesn't exist anymore. It should have thrown an error, but I don't know. Didn't feel like it. To-do store.fetch. And this is like that. Save. Let's see. Fetch does not. And we have to return it. Fetch. Save. Come back. That error's gone. Come back here. Refresh. Fetch them. And it's all working. How cool is that? We're not refetching these. You can go back and forth. They're always there, which is nice. You can always refetch if you need to. But this is awesome. So that's pretty much, us setting that up. That is so cool. So the next thing we could do is, what if we had it, maybe not a button. We want to come to this page. We want it to automatically load all of our to-dos. This is going to be our to-do page. We don't have to click a button to do that, right? So let's get rid of that button. And we're going to want to do this on before mount, right? So on before mount, I'm going to say to-do store dot fetch. And let's import, stop hitting P, on before mount, there we go, from view. So this, if we save that, come back over here, we refresh, and it's automatically pulled in for us. How awesome is that? Now every time we come back here, you can see down here at the bottom that we are refetching these each time. But it's the same data. Maybe we want to throttle this in some way, and so we can do that. So if we went to our to-do store, let's say maybe we want to only fetch after a certain amount of time, right? Well, for that, let's bring in, we're going to be working with dates and times and stuff, so let's bring in a library called Luxon. So yarn add, should it be dev? I'll leave it as normal, Luxon. Now we have Luxon, so we could say const now equals date time dot now. And of course we have to import that. Import, I think it's date time from Luxon. Save, and it seems okay. So now, and what we want to do is store that onto our store, right? So const last fetch, last request, whatever you want it to be, will become a ref, and that'll be null for now. And we'll say last fetch dot value equals now. And when we save, that'll update. Let's take a look. We refetch. We're not running it again, so gotta go back. Yarn dev. Rerun it, and we'll come back to seeing that view. It's not there, right? Well, again, because we have to remember to return it. So last fetch, and now we have access to last fetch right here, which is a big old object from Luxon. It's going to have all this really good information for us, and that's pretty cool. So now we have that. So what we want to do is we want to check. So if last fetch dot value, maybe not last fetch value, or last fetch value dot, we'll say we're going to give this plus a couple of seconds. We'll give it 5 seconds, right? We'll say 2 millis is less than or equal to now dot 2 millis. So this is just saying if there's no value within last fetch, which it starts off as not having anything, it'll run this. Otherwise, if the last time it was fetched plus 5 seconds is less than or equal to now, it should be greater than, right? Yeah. It's greater than or equal to now. No, less than or equal to. Less than or equal to, because we wanted to say, you know, if last fetch plus 5 seconds is in the future, we don't want to refetch. We only want to do it when now has exceeded that 5 seconds, right? It's a little weird to write it, but that is how we want to run this. So if we come back here, we come here, we have the fetch happening, right? To-dos are getting, they're still there. We only caught it once, but if we let 5 seconds elapse, 1 Mississippi, 2, 3, it's just going to give me, it's going to do it. Of course not. Let's see, what did I do wrong? So last fetch dot value dot plus seconds of 5 seconds. 2 millis needs to be a function. I don't know why this isn't throwing any errors on me. But now, still not fetching, but we count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We come back and we refetch. Right, so this will allow us to refetch every 5 seconds, as we see. But, you know, so it's kind of throttled a little bit. Every time we come here, this data isn't going to change all that often. You know, so we don't have to really be fetching all the time. You know, don't have to strain the server for every time somebody comes here and changes something. You know, it's not really useful for this. But let's say you had maybe a big data table, right? And you could filter by, you know, the date. You could filter by the name. You could change the order and everything like that. You can, whatever it is, maybe you can learn how to cache all that stuff. That way when you run the initial fetch, that's now cached. And then when you change it to a filter, right, you're looking for something that starts with A, right? And then you get that, and then that's cached. Now you say, remove the filter. Well, you already have the stuff cached. You don't need to rerun the whole fetch operation. You could just, you know, have it already there. So, you know, and then you can have that also, the cache, have a time limit on it as well. That way, again, you can fetch new things if needed. So that's awesome. And that's everything for what we want to do right now. We'll leave it like this. But we're like a testing channel, right? So we should probably add some tests. So let's go take a look at our tests. So if we clear this and we run yarn test spec, hit that, we should have some failing tests. So that's in here. And we do, right? So something's going on. It doesn't know about all this stuff. Well, we want to add all the Pinia stuff, right? So we're going to do, we're going to clear this out for a second. And we're going to say yarn add at Pinia /testing. So this is their little testing framework that they have. And we could pull that in to help us create a little test store for us. Test spec. We'll rerun the tests. And what we want to do, we're going to import create test store from Pinia testing. And I'm going to refer to over here, which I was working on this earlier, because it's a little complicated. But we want to have before each in here, and this is going to be like this, and we want to set up Pinia. So we're going to say out here const Pinia, and we want let store, while we're at it, let wrapper. So Pinia equals create testing store, and that's going to, we want to allow the actions, so we don't want to stub them. So stub actions, I'm going to say false. And did I say the wrong thing up here? Yep. It's create testing store, not create test store. So save that. And we want to also bring in set active Pinia. So that just pulled in. That's from Pinia. And we're going to pass in that test store that we just made. And our store is going to equal use to do store. Fantastic. So that's all pulled in for us. We can come up here, and I like doing this is just to sort my lines. Ascending just cleans it up a little bit. It looks a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner. Doesn't matter the order of this stuff. It's just nice. I'm sure you do. So you can stop that. And then we have, so down here, we have all this. We're mounting. And so actually, let's pull this wrapper out of here. We're going to constantly be doing this. So for all of our tests, so wrapper equals mount, and we want to pass in some plugins. So we're going to say global, and our plugins is just going to be that Pinia, right? Which is awesome. And now this should, let's see if this runs. Create testing store is not a function. This is saying this doesn't exist like this. Did I spell it wrong? Oh, I said store instead of Pinia. All right, let's try this now. Okay. Wrapper.get, we remove that button, so that doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to say remove that. Probably don't need this, but we'll just go one step at a time. And we'll say, all right, we were expecting to have 2. So let's just take a look. That should have fetched, right? So we have wrapper dot, oh, you know what? Let's do this. Expect, this is one of my favorite little tricks right now. Expect wrapper.vm to do store dot to do's, right? To inline match snapshot, right? We give it an empty function. Don't do anything. Just save it and see what happens. We are getting an empty array. So why is that happening? This should happen on before mount, and we are mounting it. So let's go to our to-do store. Let's take a look at our function here. Let's just log something. We'll say howdy. And come back to our test. Way down here. Oh, we do have some kind of issue going on, right? Looks like something is a little funky. We're going to just reset the store, the test, see if that still runs and gives us that error. Sometimes it gets a little funky. Might be something that I added that I didn't mean to. Alright, that error doesn't seem to be there. We are getting howdy. So, I'm not sure. The fetch method should be mocked. Well, the get method for let's see. Resolves, expected resolve. What's happening up there? We'll say fetch might be the way I did this. No, that all works. Axios. Do this little, oh, didn't mean to do that. Let's order these while we're at it. Make it all nicey nice. Do it the same thing here. And let's remove, we don't need to look at the map. We need here. We are getting that howdy message. If I left it in there, I forget. I think I removed it. Yeah, I removed it. find all to-dos next. Let's see. Interesting. I'm going to go take a look at this. I screwed something up, so give me a minute. All right, I think I found it. We're going to take this, look at this together. So we have this whole expected response, and we have sign in, stubbing Axios. Oh, you know what? I bet you that's what this is. This probably should be up here. We want to stub that before we mount the wrapper, right? And look at that. So we hit update. Yeah, it's passing. That was just a silly mistake. So, you want to stub your stuff before you actually mount, right? And again, this match inline is giving us what we want to see. This is like a nice little console log. We don't really need this anymore, but it's so nice to have. It's a nice little trick. So that works. That's really cool. Another thing we would want to test is if we could have all this stuff happen, testing, testing it being throttled, right? So let's try it out here. So let's say it only fetches new to-dos after 5 seconds, right? It's gonna be a function. Open that guy up. Oh, I opened my face. Didn't mean to do that. And what we want to do is now we're gonna say. So this is kind of interesting. I'm gonna bring my face back up. So we have our wrapper, and we want to kind of pretend we're navigating away. So what happens with that is the wrapper gets destroyed and then remounted and then destroyed and remounted every time we go out and come back. So what we want to do is we want to test if we unmount this and remount it, that the call only happens once. And it's not the call to the to-dos fetch method, because that gets called every single time. It's within there, which is the Axios get method. So that's what we want to test for. So we want to say expect wrapper.vm to-do store.todos to have length of 2, which we know it will, right? And we want to expect Axios.get to have been called times 1. So if I save this now, we're going to hit an error, and it's going to say that the trying to wrap is not already wrapped. What are you saying? Oh, after each of these, so after each time we run this, we also want to say wrapper dot unmount. And that should fix this. And it does. So Axios stub wrap get, which is already, and I think so we need to unstub that as well. So let's save this to something. We'll say Axios stub equals this. We'll say up here, let Axios stub, and down here we'll say Axios stub dot, I think it's restore. I'm not sure if that's it. It was, yeah. So this is saying, this is kind of a very weird thing, and I ran into this yesterday. It's saying that the Axios.get is not stubbed. I could even say that Axios stub is not. I wonder if it will work this way. .get. No. It's still saying it's not a spy. And it is, right? If you go to their stuff, you go to sign in, and you go to the documentation, and you go to stubs, which we're stubbing it. Test stubs are functions, spies. pre-programmed behavior, yada, yada, yada. So that should be working, but for some reason, I couldn't figure it out. And this is something I was struggling with yesterday, but I found a way around this. And instead of having this Axios stub around, we're gonna use Vitest's mock, right? So we're gonna do vi.mock. I'm gonna say Axios. This is a string, and this is where the directory is, and we're importing it. So you could just say Axios. So however you import something like this, right? So Axios, and we're gonna say, oh, press the wrong button 12 times in a row. Where am I? Here I am. I'm gonna say, I can bring my face back. Sorry about that. I know you missed me. Axios, and it's kind of complicated, but we're gonna do this. So we want to return an object, and that object is gonna be, we want to return the default thing. So the default export of Axios is Axios, right? That's how we're importing it up here. So that's how we get that. But down here, we're going to call it default. And we're going to say, we want to mess with the get. And we want to say vi.function. And we're going to say mock resolved value. And this gets hoisted. So it was giving me an error about using something like this. So I wasn't able to use this. So I'm just going to copy this and copy it out of here. And it's going to give us the object of the to-do, the data, and our to-dos. It's messy. It is messy for sure. And I'm not a big fan of it, but it's kind of how we have to do it. And we're going to say vi.reset all mocks to return that to its original. And we can come back down here. And we're going to say axios.get to have been called. And all right, so this is a different error. So we're just following our errors. This is all part of our TDD stuff. And it is saying cannot read properties of undefined reading data. So it's saying that this was not working for us, right? Default, mock, yada, yada, yada. Let's go to our to-dos. Oh, we have it. And let's just take a look at log response. I'm going to see if anything got called. It's undefined, right? Let's see. So we're mocking Axios, giving it a function, and we're returning the default and our get mock resolved value. That's our data, our to-do array of objects. It looks all right to me. All right, I'm back. All right, so what I discovered in my little journey here is there's just a little weirdness going on with here, but we could fix it and we can make things a little cleaner and a little bit better, right? So first off, our mock of Axios, let's remove all of this stuff and just do this, right? We're going to pull this out. We're going to hoist this all the way up to here. I don't know if that's the right term. I don't care. We're going to pull it all the way out here, and within here we're going to say axios.get, and we're going to mock resolved value. And that's going to be, remember that little object we had earlier? Over here, this guy. Our expected response, we could bring him back, and boom, put that right there. And if we save this, all of our tests pass so far, meaning, and you can see that our objects are all working again. So must have been some little weird thing I had going on. I'm not really sure, but that means we pulled it once, and we can take a look at the next part. So now what we want to do is we're going to say afternoon page and revisit after 1 second. Right, we're going to say vi dot. We need to have timers. So I already add this in, but vi dot use fake timers. This is going to set up our Vitest to have these fake timers. They're all like stubbed out for us, and we want to reset that after each as well. But we can say here, we can say advanced timers by time, and we're going to give it, this is all in milliseconds, so we're going to say 1 second, right? And we want to say wrapper.unmount. Let's bring this above it, right? And then the timer advances. I don't know if that matters, but in my mind, it's a little bit cleaner. So we're going to set up our wrapper again, and I think up here we kind of inlined this. So let's bring this back out. So Pinia equals here. We'll go do that. Boom. Pinia. And we just need to let Pinia up here. Pinia. And so there's that. And what we want to do is want to make sure that it all mounted. We still have the length of 2, and it's still only been called 1 time. So if you run this, we are still passing. Only got called 1 time. So now I'm just going to copy this whole thing, paste again after 5 seconds, right? And we only need 4,000 milliseconds because 4 plus 1, it's 5 seconds. Easy. So this should fail. Save it, and it does fail. It expected 1, but it received 2. And that's with this. So 2 right there. And that's passing. That's pretty cool, right? So we can actually get rid of our console logs. We got a couple of them around. It was just to help us do our thing. I think it's in here. Console log in the response. Don't need that anymore. Save, and on home page, I think I added one too. Did. Now everything's nice and cleaned up for us, and we're passing. But this is something I want you to look at. This is something for us to kind of think about together right now, right? So we have our component test, our page test, if you will, and we're testing if we're fetching things on subsequent calls, right? Is this the right place to test this? I don't know, right? I think maybe the better place for it is within the actual store. If we created one specifically for the store and we tested it within there, I think that would be a much better test. This works. This is proving that when you kind of go back and forth between a page, but it's a little ugly, it looks clunky. There's a lot going on. You're unmounting and mounting and unmounting and mounting. And we're really only testing. The real test here is, do we recall Axios get within a certain time frame, right? So let's take this test and let's see what we can do a little bit better. Let's go into our stores, and remember I created this little tests folder. There's nothing in it, so oops. Go here, to do store.spec.ts. So we're going to do describe, and we're going to say our to-do store. And we're not even looking at my code. So what I did was I made a test called to-do store.spec, and in here just describe to-do store. And I also want to describe our actions. Boom, right? So what we want to do is we're going to probably have a before each set up here. And let's think about how we want to do this. So I have this open on a different, over here. So what we're going to need is we're going to need to kind of set our Pinia up and have all of that. So we need to set active Pinia. That should have imported that for us. And we need to create Pinia. And that works. Another thing we want to have is our vi use fake timers again, because we're going to be working with that. And we want to also have our after each. Since we are using the fake timers, we want to reset that. Use real timers. We're going to want to mock. So let's come up here before the whole describe thing. We're going to do vi.mock. We're going to say Axios. And in here, I'm going to say Axios.get.mock. What was it? Returned resolved. Value. And we're going to have, just like we had in our spec up here, which is our expected response. Come back over here. And expected response. So this is looking pretty good so far. So we want to describe the actions. Let's give ourselves a little breathing room here. And we're going to say test. Let's say the fetch can only be called 5 seconds after previous call. This is async, and so let's take a look. So we want to say, first off, our const store is equal to use to do store. And that got imported way up here. And we want to say await store.fetch. And then we expect our Axios.get to be called times 1. Right? So if I save this, this is all running. This let's see, expected that, but found that. Where's that at? Stores, it's in here. What line is that on? Right there. Save that. Okay, we're passing. Beautiful. So it's only called one time. And we want to say, all right, we're going to say after just 1 second, say vi.advanced timers by time, and we're going to give it a second. Save. We're still passing. Gorgeous. Right? After 5 seconds, I'm going to say total. I'm going to say this. And that's 4. And we are failing because we didn't update this, and it should be called 2 times. We're passing. So let's take a look at these 2 tests here. We want to check the value of these tests. We have, let's go down here. We're saying we're expecting that this happens after 5 seconds. All right, with here we have to unmount and remount and unmount and remount. We could put this into a function itself, which I might do. Clean this up. Actually, I will do. And we'll, actually, let's do that now. Let's say, down here, we'll say const remount component. And we're going to say to that, and we're just going to do this. So we're going to say, copy all that, paste that in here. We'll get rid of the timers. And do this. Do remount component. And we'll do that up here as well. And let's see. So this still passing, right? So that's working. So that's nice. That's a nice little refactor we did. and it's nice. We advance by time, and we remount component we're expecting. So this is nice and clean. This is all cleaned up for us. Beautiful. And so what's the value between these, right? Is one better than the other? I honestly can't say. This is where everything gets kind of weird in all of this, right? We want to make sure that we're testing the right things in the right places, and this is definitely doing both. Both of these tests are doing the same exact thing, but what is it really that we're testing? We're testing really Axios isn't being called through the store within a certain amount of time. And that's here. If we take a look here, this test, to me, it doesn't provide any extra value, right? We're getting all of the value from the test store. So this, in my mind, first off, it reads a little cleaner. We did clean this up. We have the, remount component and everything. We pulled all that out, made it reusable, and it's gorgeous. We could even do that the same thing with here. This doesn't really add anything, so we could do that. But again, which one provides more value? And in my mind, it's this. This one's more direct. It's acting on the store, and the store is where everything is happening. The component or the page, it's a side member of this change. It works with data that is happening from the store, and the store is handling all this. So in my mind, the store should have the test, not the component. So this is going to be deleted. And remove that, clean that up. We don't need this anymore. And I think that's a little bit nicer. We now back down to 4 passing tests. We have 3 files running. To me, that's everything we need. And again, this, to kind of reiterate, this isn't really like a necessary thing as far as throttling the to-dos. I just wanted to show you that you can mock Axios, have a returned resolved value, and interact with it and have, make sure that you're calling it and working with the mocks. I want to dedicate a whole video to mocking stuff. It is such a huge, huge task, and I'm just a little bit afraid of it. But we're going to get to it, and we're going to love it. But I think that does it for this one. So if you learned anything, if any of this provided any kind of value, hit that like, subscribe. We're going to be continuing on with this, and let's see where this thing goes. All right? Loved having you here. Cheers.